Alright, if you can hear us, this is Ranger Daniel, and I'm joined here with Ranger Julian. We'll be doing a live play-by-play. We'll be getting started here in just a moment. Kind of stand right here. Okay, everyone, this is Ranger Daniel. I'm joined here with Ranger Julian. Say hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
We're here in Katmai National Park on the Alaskan Peninsula. This is a big national park with a lot of brown bears and a lot of salmon. We're going to be pointing the camera at some of those things tonight. We'll be talking over the next hour. Talking about what we're seeing, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some of the questions. Post your questions in the comments below the video. We'll be talking as we go along and narrating what we're seeing. If there's a pause in the conversation, don't worry. We're just going to let you enjoy things from time to time. We're going to be looking with our binoculars, seeing what new things we can spot. It's kind of a rainy afternoon here in Katmai, so we've got everything covered with plastic bags to make sure we stay dry.
Something I'm noticing right now is just the sheer amount of salmon jumping at the falls. I was counting a little earlier, and in a minute you can count easily over 200 salmon jumping. The river is full of them right now.
So that's a lot. That's a lot of salmon, but it's not the it's probably not the most you've seen here, right? Right, Julian?
No, there was one day where there were so many salmon, it seemed almost like a carpet in the river. You could have stepped on salmon. And at that point, it was about 350 to 400 fish counted every minute.
So that's something you can do if you're watching the cameras at home. If you're on explore.org and you're watching the cams, you can count the number of fish per minute
That are jumping.
and figure out the rate per minute. That's something that the rangers are doing here every day, every half hour actually, just to keep some data on that. So we'll go over. Let's explain some of the general things about Katmai National Park and Brooks Camp and everything. Maybe we'll start with the salmon run. So what kind of fish are these, Julian? What are they doing, and why are they jumping up that waterfall?
So right now we have sockeye salmon, or red salmon. They've been coming up the Naknek River into the Naknek Lake, and now they're traveling along the Brooks River to Brooks Lake. This is one of the first stops a lot of salmon make, and one of the first sort of barriers to their migration. They are trying to get to their spawning grounds, where they will spawn and then be no more. They'll die.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing about what we have going on here, is that these are ocean-going fish for the most part. They're born in freshwater streams like the Brooks River here. They're born in gravel bars on rivers or little creeks, And then they travel to the ocean as when they get old enough, and they spend several years in the ocean traveling around large Pacific Ocean currents called the North Pacific Gyre. And they follow that around for a couple of years, eating zooplankton and getting fat. And then they return up here, and when they're big like this, 5 to 10 pounds, can be over 4,000 calories per fish for a bear that eats them. And so that's why we have brown bears here. That's why we don't call them grizzlies. I mean, it's not a real important point, but it's one that we make, is that these are brown bears and not grizzly bears because they eat and use marine resources like salmon.
So because of that, these bears here can get sometimes double the size of an inland grizzly bear. A lot of grizzly bears, a male might get up to around 500 pounds, and that is what our females reach here, 500, 600 pounds. Some of the males easily weigh over 1,000 pounds, over 1 ton.
Do you have any guesses on how big this bear is right here, Julian? How much do you think it weighs?
If I had to take a guess, I'd say 480 right here weighs over 850 pounds. Will definitely be over 1,000 by the time September comes around.
He's a pretty big bear. Okay, so yeah, if you're just joining us, we're going to be doing a live play-by-play chat here over the next hour. I'm Ranger Daniel.
I'm Ranger Julian.
We're here in Katmai National Park on the Alaskan Peninsula. You can post your comments down below. We'll try and sort through those comments if we can. So around here in Katmai National Park, we have a handful of webcams provided by explore.org. They have a bunch of cameras all over the world of different wild and cool animals, and so you can check those out at explore.org. And every now and then, rangers like Julian and I will hop on the cameras like this and just do a little bit of interpreting of what we're seeing and talking about it. Every now and then, while we're talking here, we'll pause and just kind of scan the area with our binoculars. So if there's no talking, for a minute, don't worry, your sound didn't cut out. We're just taking it all in and letting you enjoy it as well. One of the things we get asked a lot here is how are we so close to these bears, and isn't that dangerous? So I guess we can explain a little bit of where we're at. We are actually on a platform right now. We call it the Falls Platform. It's looking down here at the Brooks River and Brooks Falls. That's what you're seeing right now. A short river that connects two big Alaskan lakes. And these platforms allow us and visitors to get a close look at bears in a relatively safe way. We like to say there's no safe place in Brooks Camp out here in Bush, Alaska, but these platforms allow us to get a lot closer than we would otherwise be able to. Otherwise, the rules for Katmai is that we must maintain at least 50 yards from all bears at all times. Zooming in here right now on the river, I don't know how well you can see it, but the river's pretty thick with fish right now, and some of them are looking pretty red. That's why we call these, they're sockeye salmon, but they're commonly known as red salmon, because as they go into their spawning stage, their skin will absorb their scales, and it will turn red. And they become this beautiful red and green color, and we're just seeing that more and more every day. But you'll notice that the healthy jumping fish are not very red yet.
They'll start turning red when they get closer to the spawning ground, and that red will be very much a signifier. Will signify that they're ready to mate.
All right, we have another bear coming down. One of the questions that we've been getting a lot, is why are there this many bears here now and not, why are there more at other times? Some people, feel like this isn't very many bears. In my mind, 2 bears is quite a few. From a lower 48 perspective, it's pretty unusual to see more than 1 bear together, especially brown bears, especially big male bears like this. They are not social creatures, and it is not common to see them this close to each other. So from one perspective, 2 bears is actually quite a lot. But yeah, it's true, we do often get a lot more than that around here.
And a lot of times I hear, there's so many fish in the river, why aren't there more bears? And a lot of times I believe there are less bears around right now because there actually are so many fish. Bears right now can be very selective when they come to feed, and they probably prefer to feed or eat the salmon when there are less people around looking at them. Right now here in the platform, there's about 30 to 40 people along with the 2 of us. So we do have an impact on these bears. We do stress them out a little bit, and they probably prefer to not be around us if they could so choose. So on a day like today with so many fish, they'll probably show up when the platform's closed after 10 o'clock at night.
Or early in the morning, maybe. Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes these bears will act like they don't notice us. They'll act very nonchalant. Their behavior is very casual. They might move kind of slow and not look at us up here. But it can be deceiving. These bears are very much aware of the people on this platform, and that's actually something that Katmai National Park is studying very closely right now, is how tolerant will these bears be of people, as we see an increase in visitation, as we see more traffic, air traffic, and boats and vehicles in this area, how much are the bears going to tolerate? And it's a question without an answer yet, but the park is looking into that, looking at how many anglers on the river and photographers on the river, how many people can be on the platforms at a time without causing the bears to change their behavior. And that's one of the things that Katmai National Park is here to protect, actually, is not just the animals, but their wild behaviors and the natural processes. So one question that I saw in the comments before we got started was, are these are national park jobs coveted? Are they hard to get? How does someone become a ranger, and is it extra hard to get a job in Katmai National Park? Have you thought about that much, Julian?
Well, actually, this is my first time working in a U.S. park. I spent a good amount of time, 2 years now in Latin America, working around all of the parks, Panama, Peru, Bolivia. So for me, I applied. I had heard that there would be a lot of competition, and I suppose it felt that way when I applied and when I got interviewed. Ultimately, I don't know what our supervisor, what his criteria was at the time, how many people he had to go through. But I've heard in general that it's not the easiest to get your foot in the door with a park job. I was in the Peace Corps before this, and so I had maybe a little bit leg up because I had been involved with government, in a government organization. So that may have helped, but I think a lot of times you have to volunteer, especially if you're younger, just out of college, and take a lower position.
Yeah, they can be competitive. But this working here in Katmai National Park itself is a competitive job. This is the most amazing place I've ever been in my life. In all my travels, all the parks I've worked at, this is absolutely the most amazing place. I've seen bears and I've seen salmon in other places, but it's a rare thing, on this planet to be able to see so many bears so close, doing so many amazing behaviors, seeing fish in this abundance. You know, these fish are totally wild. There's no hatchery. All these fish jumping do this every year on their own accord, and they've done so for thousands of years, and that just blows my mind every time I think about it. So yeah, Katmai is competitive, but there's also some other things about Katmai that make it a little bit less competitive than you might think, give it a little bit of a higher turnover. One of those things is that, you know, we have no cell phone service out here, and it's expensive and logistically complex to get back to cell phone service. You can't just get in your car and go somewhere. And on that same note, just the logistics of living here are complex. You know, we can't run down to the grocery store. There isn't one here. All of our food has to be mailed to us ahead of time, or we have some internet access. We can order things. So it can just be a remote and challenging place in that regard, and that ends up making the turnover rate a little bit higher here, but it's still a pretty amazing place to work, and I think most people think it's worth it.
Ultimately, I feel very lucky to be here.
Yeah. So this bear back here in the corner, he's got a fish. One of the questions that I've seen in the comments is why don't the bears eat the whole fish? You know, and that's a good question. We'll watch right now. We'll see if this bear eats the whole fish or not, because they do sometimes eat the whole fish, but they don't always.
And again, it goes back to sort of the number of the fish in the river right now.
Yeah, when there's this many fish, it's simply good energy economics to only eat the fattiest and most nutritious parts of the fish. We call it high grading, like they say in mining, when you just take the highest grade of an ore when you mine. These bears are just taking the most nutritious and the most caloric, the highest caloric part of the fish. So that's typically the brains. They eat the fish brains, they eat the skin, and if it's a female, they'll eat the eggs. And maybe sometimes one or two other bites just out of the meat, but sometimes you'll see that they'll be pretty methodical about just selecting those pieces and then dropping the rest of the fish into the river.
The part that we like the fillet, really will just be extra space that's being taken up in their stomach. So they go for like Daniel said, the fattiest part.
And so we'll watch. Let's try and pay attention here to how long it takes this bear to catch another fish. But you know, you'll notice that they're spending a relatively small amount of time between fish, and so why eat the less nutritious parts of the fish when you can catch them this quickly?
We were talking about there being mostly sockeye red salmon, but right now there actually are some pink salmon in the river as well, and they've been spawning. They've already started spawning along the Brooks River here.
We've actually been able to see, this is something when you're at home and you're watching the Explore cams, what you should do is try and look into the edges of the water if you can. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you'll be able to actually see the spawning taking place. I'll try and zoom in on some of these fish down here right now. I don't know how well you can see it, but here in these shallows, sometimes you'll actually see the salmon spawning. In the past couple days, we've been watching some pink salmon spawning just below the riffle's camera. So the pink salmon look a little differently. the sockeye can actually look more pink than the pink ones right now, but pink salmon are just a different species. They end up having a big hump on their back, and so a lot of people call them hump salmon. But the females are more speckled, less colored, and a little bit smaller. But their story is very similar. Ocean-going fish returning from the ocean to go reproduce in the same gravel bed sometimes, at least the very same section of river that they were born in. And so they're making this same journey that the sockeye salmon are making. And I've actually noticed when I watch the salmon jumping, I can sometimes see fish that are probably king salmon. When you're watching the falls and you're seeing a lot of fish jump like this, if you ever see one that seems amazingly large, maybe twice the size or close to twice the size of all the other fish jumping, it's probably a king salmon. You'll have to let me know in the comments down below if any of you guys watching see that.
So before we were talking about the bear in the back, I believe it could be 856, was eating a fish and he was eating it whole. We talked about how sometimes bears will hydrate to the fattiest parts of the fish, like the skin, the brains, the tail, the roe, or the egg. And I feel like now this 856 has caught another fish in the back, and that's exactly what he's doing now. Just taking out the skin, going for the fattiest parts. And now you let go of the fish and fishing down river, and we'll go for another one.
So I'm just reading through the comments here on below the Explore cams. There's comment threads where you can post your questions, and I've been looking through them. I've been seeing that there's, as usual, always some trouble hearing us in different ways. We'll check our cables and make sure things are working. And then we also been hearing that there's 273, bear 273 and her cub at the lower river, so it's a bit distracting. And if you haven't discovered the pop-out feature that allows you to watch two of the cams at once, then this is a great time to check that out, so that you can listen to the play-by-play that we're doing here right now, and that you can watch that sow with her cub down there that is a favorite bear of a lot of the viewers. I think, though, thinking about the cubs and why they might be at the lower river and not up here is an interesting point. It brings up an interesting point. It's interesting to think about. Why aren't there cubs up here? And of course, if you watch regularly, there are sometimes.
So, what I believe happening here is this is one of the most coveted spots in the river, where the fish will mass up, and so it's one of the biggest concentrations of salmon in the river at any given time, and this will be the easiest place to fish because of that. Because it's easiest to fish and bears don't have to use a lot of energy, the biggest, most dominant bears will get the best spots up here. And so you'll see a lot more males here than you'll see, or adult males especially, than you'll see anywhere else in the river. And that is usually what scares off a lot of smaller males, females, and especially females with cubs. Because males are known to chase after those cubs.
One of the things Brooks Camp and Brooks Falls here is sort of famous for is watching bears fish off the lip of the falls. That's actually not one of the best fishing spots, and that's why you'll see often sows with their cubs up in that spot, is because where we have Otis here moving into, that's actually one of the best fishing spots. It's right here in the jacuzzi, and some of these spots right below the falls can be a lot more productive fishing spots where it takes a lot less energy to fish in these spots, a lot less coordination. And so you'll see that the most dominant males end up in those spots. So everyone's kind of got their theory on what 480's doing down there, or what any of the bears when they're fishing in the jacuzzi are doing under the water, because there's not really any way for us to see under the water and see exactly how they're catching the fish. Have you thought about what they're doing under there in the water, Julian?
I have thought about it. I figure they're feeling around with their paws, the front paws down there. They're either be trying to pin the fish to the floor, or more likely pin the fish sort of to its arm. And when it has it there, sort of semi-securely, it'll go down and try to bite it. That's a guess.
Yeah, that seems to be what a lot of the rangers think is going on down under there. I know, Julian, did you stick your head under the water there in May too, when we were out here earlier this season before the bears? So both of us jumped in the jacuzzi there, and open your eyes, and we opened our eyes in the water and looked around, and you can't see anything. It's just pure bubbles down there. So when you see the bear stick its head under, it's really not looking as much as trying to bite the fish down there. There, you see that? It's reaching down, bit it. Just like that. Exactly what we're talking about. But so the fish can't necessarily see all that well under there either. So the bear's just waiting for the fish to make a mistake, slip back up into his body where he can pin it, bite it, and then take it over to eat it.
Now that it's closer, you start to get a better sense of just how big he is.
He is huge. There's no way of really knowing this, but how many... Oh!
Just lost it.
It's a frustrating thing for any bear, but it happens all the time. It's a tempting time to read some human emotion into a bear when something like that happens, and try and guess at what's happening, what's going on inside that bear's brain. But it would all be speculation. There's really no way of knowing. But it seems unlikely that it would actually be having a kind of an emotional reaction similar to a human in a similar situation. Maybe you disagree, though. Let me know what you think. Post it in the comments. How do you think Otis feels after dropping a fish? What I was thinking before he dropped the fish there, Julian, was how much do you think that bear's gained weight-wise since the beginning of the salmon run, since mid-June? Just there's only really, all you can do is guess, but could be in the order of more than 100 pounds.
Yeah, right now I was gonna say about the same. I don't have a rancher's ability to look at an animal and guess off the bat. But he does seem to have gained some weight when we first saw him. And I would also put it around 100 pounds.
Yeah. It's looking a lot bigger than when we first started seeing him. And sometimes commenters in the comments below the Explore cams there will post some pictures, some side-by-side pictures of the spring to the summer to the fall of the same bear, and you can really see that transformation, because they do have to gain a huge portion of weight, a huge amount of weight. Often it's several hundred pounds, because they're not going to be eating all winter long when they go into hibernation, and there's not much food to be had out here in Alaska in the wintertime. So they have to eat enough in 6 months for the rest of the year.
When they come out of their dens, they've lost well over 30% of their body fat reserves. Sometimes as much as 40 or more if the female who's been nursing the whole winter.
So I'm looking at the comments. We're getting some interesting things here. I like some people are guessing at what Otis might have been thinking. Otis is the nickname of this bear that I've got the camera on right now. It's one of the bigger males that we really see down here a lot at Brooks Falls.
Definitely one of the older males.
That's true. Obviously, he's a wild animal and doesn't know his nickname or anything like that. It's just a nickname that some of the viewers and some of the visitors to Katmai here come up with. It also goes by the number that researchers have assigned to this bear. I believe is 480. But some people have been guessing what they think that bear is thinking, you know, after he dropped that fish a minute ago. And Indian by Nature says, I think he feels easy come, easy go. Ha, no sweat. He will get another one soon. Could be. He's a pretty skilled fishing bear.
He's a little bit slower than some of the other bears, like, don't know if we're panned on it right now, but in the back, what I believe is 856 has another fish. Might be his fifth one since we saw him come down. But he can do the catch the fish pretty quickly. Otis, over the span of the day, will catch a lot of fish. I think we had a count recently of over 40 fish in a day. But he may do so a little slower than some other bears.
And that, yeah, so you'll see different strategies for different bears. It's not always about speed necessarily. It's about getting the most calories you can with the least amount of effort. And different bears have different strategies for doing it, and different bears are better at it than other bears. That's why you see the sows with their cubs down at the lower river. You'll see some bears doing a dash and grab, some on the lip of the falls, some sitting and waiting. There's a lot of different strategies that they'll employ to try and get the most amount of calories with the least amount of effort. Oh, here's an interesting question from Louise Johnson on the comments. Rangers, is there a trench at the base of the falls, or is the floor of the river mostly level down there? I can give you kind of a pan of some of the area here. We've waded in the falls there, and it's hard to know exactly what's under the water, right under where it's coming down. But when I was jumping in there was definitely a lot of space behind the edge of the water where you see the fish, and then to where the rocks are, maybe almost kind of a small cave. But there's also a tremendous amount of pressure and force coming down with that water, and it was too scary for me to really explore it. It's a bit like being in a washing machine. Then right down here in front of the platform, you've probably seen on the cams before, the edge of the river just slopes down to the water. The deepest part of the river right here is actually right about in the middle, right out over there. Oh, there on the camera right through the middle, you just saw the big surge of splashes and a little bit of whitewater. That's the sockeye salmon. That's them. They'll move through shallow sections sometimes as a big school like that and create a large amount of riffles. They'll try and move together as a group, and sometimes they'll get spooked with a seagull or an eagle flying overhead. So Julian, we've been looking at the birds a lot here, huh? Since when the days like this, when there are only a few bears, and sometimes they can be just sitting in one place for a while, it's a good time to watch birds. Have you been doing that like I have?
Yeah, and especially even before the bears got here, but also now. In this area right here, we'll see a lot of different types of gulls. new glaucus, definitely some bald eagles. And I've been getting some interesting questions of why we're seeing more juvenile bald eagles right now than adult bald eagles. I don't actually know, but it has sort of been the consensus that we've been seeing a lot more juveniles or immature bald eagles than mature. We have magpies, ravens, kingfishers around here, some other shorebirds and ducks as well.
The kingfisher is an interesting to watch for. Very, very cool bird. But right now I've got it zoomed in on a juvenile bald eagle. You've probably seen this one. He's been hanging out quite a bit in the past few days. You'll see him come swoop down and steal fish from the gulls. Julian and I were actually observing a very interesting kind of relationship between the different birds and the fish and the bears that's going on here, and what they're each uniquely suited for, and why we kind of a symbiotic relationship in this web going on here. Right before the chat, we were watching some of that. What we were seeing was that the gulls are really not that well suited for tearing into a big, healthy sockeye salmon. It's got pretty tough skin. It's a big, heavy fish, and as you've probably noticed, the gulls don't have talons or very sharp beaks. They can't tear into those fish very well. They can peck at the eyes, and if there's a bite out of the fish from the bears, they can start eating from that bite. Or if the bears leave behind a widely opened fish, if they've eaten a lot of it, then it makes it a lot easier for the gulls to start eating. And the eagles can do the same thing. I mean, the eagles are obviously a lot better equipped for biting into and breaking apart salmon, even if they haven't been bitten by a bear at all yet. But it still helps them out, and it allows the eagles to get more calories with less energy. And it's really the name of the game for all of these animals.
And the eagles I've seen around here are definitely a little bit more of a scavenger than anything else. They'll wait till something is already dead before they come over and start eating it. Really, all this is built on the salmon, the bears, the birds, the vegetation, other fish. Salmon really are the keystone species of this area. Not only Brooks River, but Naknek, a lot of the Alaskan Peninsula really depend on these salmon.
Yeah, so there's a concept to explain that gets thrown around a lot that you've probably heard before, but it's enjoyable for me to anyway really think about what it means. And that concept is a keystone species. You know, what exactly is a keystone species? When you're building something, sometimes the stone or the brick that holds it all together is a keystone. You know, like in an arch, the top brick would be a keystone, and without that the whole thing collapses. And ecosystems can be structured in a similar way. They're very, very complex webs and networks of lots of animals together that are very difficult for humans to understand. Sometimes it's tempting for us to see an ecosystem or the web of life as a machine, simply with levers and buttons to be pushed. You know, it's organized in a clean and hierarchical way, but it's not always the case. And this ecosystem has the sockeye salmon as the keystone species. Without them, all or much of what we see would fall apart. Doesn't mean that there would be no life here, or that animals wouldn't live here, even the bears wouldn't live here. Bears would probably continue to live here without the salmon, but it wouldn't be the same. Wouldn't be the same at all. Excuse me. So again, if you're just joining us, I'm Ranger Daniel.
I'm Ranger Julian.
And we're here in Katmai National Park. It's a big national park on the Alaskan Peninsula.
4 million acres.
Yeah, very big. That's as big as Yellowstone National Park and Yosemite National Park combined. Two of the United States' other big national parks. So tonight we're going to be talking during this hour, answering questions if we can scan through the comments below the Explore cams, answering them. So we're rangers here with the National Park Service. We work for the U.S. government, and we're partnered with Explore.org to show these amazing creatures on the webcams. And every now and then we'll do this where we hop online and answer some questions and talk about what we're looking at. Right now we're watching brown bears eat sockeye salmon. Like this bear back here in the corner is peeling the skin, one of the most nutritious parts of the salmon, and he's eating it. He has to eat enough this summer to survive all winter when he goes into hibernation. So yeah, we were talking about Katmai National Park being, as big as Yellowstone and Yosemite combined. If you've ever visited some of either of those national parks, they get millions of visitors every year. One of the things they like to say is more people visit those national parks each summer than have ever visited Katmai National Park since its formation. And that's, Katmai is a very remote and logistically difficult place to get to, and it's one of the reasons that it's so special, though. And it helps the Park Service in preserving it. One of the challenges facing parks like Yosemite and Yellowstone is the heavy visitation as they try and balance allowing and encouraging enjoyment of our national parks and overusage. One of the fears is that we're loving our national parks to death, and that's something that we think about here in Katmai as well. How much will the bears tolerate visitation and planes flying overhead and boats and vehicles in the area? Sometimes they can act like they don't care that we're here at all, but they're very much aware of how many people are on these platforms watching them.
And because we are so remote, it takes a bit of a carbon footprint, or it requires a bit of an effort to get out here. There are no roads here to Brooks River. We're part of Katmai National Park. So you have to come out here in a boat or a plane, most times in a plane. That is uses a lot of fuel, as well as other resources.
We're watching the salmon really surge around down here, creating their own waves.
Did you say we're over the peak of the salmon run?
Yeah, it clearly, it appears that the numbers are going down now. The state has actually stopped counting. The commercial fishing season out in Bristol Bay is largely over. Some boats are going to continue to stay out and fish, I believe, but we don't interact with that much. But here we're still seeing a lot of fish, so we should expect to continue to see bears here for a while as the fish taper out for the season.
Yeah, that's something that really surprised me, to know that we're over the peak, but still have so many fish. Earlier today I was counting well over 200, sometimes over 300 fish jumping the falls in a minute. So there's still a lot out there. There's still a lot to come.
I think the last count I saw said that we had about 1.5 million, 1.6 million sockeye salmon escape into the Naknek River system. So yeah, only 20 to 30% of those are going to be coming here into the Brooks River. So that means hundreds of thousands of fish are coming into this little river right here and trying to jump this waterfall.
Most likely at least over 300,000.
I know, so Julian, I'm sure you've been getting this question a lot from visitors here on the platforms. How many of these fish are actually making it up the waterfall?
In the end, most of them make it. If you take a look at a group jumping, it may only look like 1 in 10 are actually making it, but they'll keep trying until they do. These fish, for generations have been making the falls, and they're well adapted to do so. The ones who do make the falls pass on their genes to future generations that will be more likely to be able to jump the falls. Fish do spawn below the falls and in other river systems, but most of the ones trying to jump right now will most likely make it and return to their spawning grounds.
So someone has another question about that. Louisa girl says, do any of the fish actually get hurt trying to jump the falls? It looks like some of them hit the rocks.
Yeah, that was actually a concern of early fish and wildlife employees around here. Back in the 50s, they were noticing the fish jumping, and that a lot were seemingly knocking themselves out. So it does happen. Fish and Wildlife Service put in a fish ladder to try and help the salmon or facilitate easier sort of trip up the falls. But what a lot of people found out was the falls are actually a great way to sort of select for genes and diversify the gene pool, because only certain types of fish will be able to make it up there.
Oh, right. Only the strongest fish will be able to do it. Therefore, they'll pass on those strong fish genes to the next generation.
But indeed, some do not make it.
So that's something you can watch for at home when you're watching the Explore.org cams, is watch downstream in spots, even on the lower river. Sometimes you'll see a little bit of silver floating down the river, or if you're watching the riffles cam or the falls cam, you'll see some of the fish that have either exhausted themselves or been pummeled or traumatized by the pounding water, or they hit the rocks, like the commenter said, and you'll see them kind of floating in a daze. We've seen a couple of them since we've been standing here kind of flop onto the island here, and some of them might recover from that, and a lot of them probably won't. But those are also important. That's an important piece for this ecological puzzle that we have going on here. Those fish allow sows with cubs and young subadult bears who don't have very good fishing skills yet. It allows them to eat and get a lot of calories that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise. So very little is wasted in this place.
Like we said before, the bears here at the falls will be some of the more dominant bears. They'll use their weight and size to push around younger bears and females, especially females with cubs. So it's important that some fish wash down the river and are available to other bears. Not only other bears, but other animals here. There's birds. There are river otters in here as well, and other mammals, fish, and birds.
The number I've seen quoted in books and in research papers is 137 vertebrate species that depend on salmon for food. And we have some action over here. This is just what Julian was talking about. Bears pushing each other around with their size and weight. A lot of times that doesn't actually end up being physical conflict. It's bullying. It's, that's to put a human spin on it, but it's just pushing each other around as much as possible without actually resorting to violence.
Bears do have very much a complex sort of set of social cues, social hierarchy, and things they'll do to avoid contact. They are very well equipped to take each other out and do a lot of damage. So they've developed some of these cues or actions to warn each other, to posture, and to let each other know who is dominant. You'll see them sort of interact very often, but only 5 or 10% of the time, or sometimes 1 in 10 times, will it actually result in physical contact.
So we've been so distracted by the fish in Bear 480 right down here in front catching fish. The numbers have increased. We're now seeing, I see 4 bears in the area. That feels about like an average night here at Brooks Falls as 4 bears. But of course, we're famous for the nights when there are double or triple or quadruple that number of bears right here in this one little area. And I like to emphasize to visitors and to people on the cams here how special that is. Not very many places in the world can you go and see bears congregate in such great numbers. Like we've been saying, bears are not social creatures. This is a pretty special thing.
In a lot of areas, bears territory will cover a few hundred miles, 300 or more, sometimes 1,000 in the upper cases. And here, you see 5, 10, 15 bears, 20 bears sometimes in the 1 mile radius. It's also, I think, interesting to note that before that, right now some more bears are popping up, and it is usually around this time, evening, nighttime, that we do see more bears start to appear. Could be a lot of reasons for it. I sometimes think it's because there tend to be less people. You'll get a lot of people coming in for the day, and they'll be flying out starting around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, around 6 or 7. So around this time, almost 6 o'clock here in Alaska, a lot of the people coming here for the day have already left. And the bears will start appearing again as less people are around.
It was weird.
Yeah, right now on the camera is one of our more energetic bears. Looks like 775 lefty, if I'm not mistaken, Daniel.
Sure could be. Some of the commenters, I don't know if we have an answer for this, were asking how lefty this bear got, how it injured its ear, if we knew that story. Have you heard that story? Yeah.
No, I'm not.
And that's something important to remember, is that we really, as much as we get to see with these cams, which is really a lot, is a relatively small amount of these bears' lives. A lot goes on outside our view when the cams aren't on. A lot goes on at night and when they're away from the cameras, and the rest of the year when the cameras aren't on. And so we miss out a lot on what's going on in their lives. So one of the things I've been seeing people talk about in the comments here is they're watching the Lower River camera right now on explore.org, which is maybe 3/4 of a mile downriver from here. This is a fairly short river. This is the Brooks River, and it flows into Naknek Lake, and you can watch it, the mouth of the river there where it flows into Naknek Lake. And right now there's a sow with her cub down there, and they've been playing. And that's an interesting thing to watch, as some of the commenters were pointing out, that it's not just play for enjoyment, that it's also about learning and skill building, muscle building.
What's really interesting to me is that a lot of times playing will occur between siblings, cubs when they're young, but in a case where it's female with only one cub, the mother will take a lot bigger role in the play, and she'll often play a lot more with her cub.
Yeah, the sows teach their cubs a lot of things. One of the things they might teach is fishing techniques as well. This bear we're watching now doing is what we call the dash and grab technique, is pouncing and jumping. Pretty a high energy fishing technique, but if you get good at it, it can still be pretty efficient. So these different techniques, to a large extent, are taught, passed down from mother bear to cubs, but they can also learn new techniques as they grow older. Bears are fairly smart creatures, especially when it comes to learning how to get food.
This bear in the middle here, for example, very energetic. He's also known for stealing fish, pushing around smaller bears, taking away their fish. He's probably not going to do that with these two bears here, but if there were some younger males or females around, he might just try to do that.
Seems to be coughing right now. Is that what it looks like to you, Julian?
Yeah, you have to jump it into the water there.
Maybe he swallowed some water. Happens to the best of us. But bears are incredibly resilient and tough. They can overcome a tremendous amount of hardship and physical ailment. There, his dash and grab is finally paid off. And he let it go. Julian, why did he let it go after all of that?
I guess only he can tell us. Could have been something he didn't find suitable in it. Sure.
He's got another one. Perhaps how he eats this one will give us clues as to why he might have let that one go.
It could have also been slipped.
Yeah, he might not have meant to do it, I suppose.
The water is rushing very fast. Sometimes it's hard to tell because of how steady the bears look, but they're pulling around a lot of weight, and for them it's very easy, or any other animal would be quite an ordeal.
Yeah, as we were explaining earlier, the average weight of some of these bears is going to be, the average weight for our bears here is going to be probably over 700 pounds, but some of these are going to be over 1,000 by the end of the summer. That weight, and then a good heavy coat of fur and increasingly an insulating layer of fat is what allows them to just sit in this water, which is very cold water, probably right around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. They can sit there for a long time, but it requires that they eat a high-calorie diet. And that is exactly what they're doing.
Back at it again, he's got another one. So this again, I would say, shows me that right now there's so many fish in the river that they're able to catch fish pretty fast. They'll probably fill up pretty fast, and then they'll go off, sleep, or go somewhere else. And that's probably why we're not seeing a lot of bears right now. This is a good amount, for sure.
Yeah, we have 3 right here at the falls and one down in the riffles. And we're getting to the end of the hour here. Always feel free to ask questions in the comments. Check out all the other cams. Right now is a good time of year to actually be seeing a lot of bears on all the different cameras along the Brooks River here in Katmai National Park. Julian and I are going to be signing off here in a moment. We've been talking and answering questions here on the Explore cams in Katmai National Park. We're rangers here. We do this every now and then. We'll jump on the cams and talk about what we're seeing and what's going on. So stay tuned. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and Facebook. Follow Explore on social media, and we'll be posting times of these chats in the future, and so you can follow along.